Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be starting the session soon. So as a gentle reminder, we ask that you switch your mobile phones to silent mode so that we avoid disruptions during the session. So please note that this session will be recorded for informational, educational, as well as marketing purposes. The recording will be hosted on YouTube as well as accessible through our NTU website. All rights to the recorded materials are owned by NTU. And with that, a warm welcome to our inaugural public lecture, part of the Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series. I'm Rina Cake, a final year business student here at Nanyang Business School, and I'm very excited to be at MCU tonight. So it's really fantastic to see such a diverse group of attendees here at Gaia Auditorium, as well as many of you who are joining us online from around the world. Thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedules to join us here tonight. So on to exciting things. Tonight, we'll be exploring the growing US-China financial rivalry and its potential impacts on global markets, as well as its cross-border investments. At the same time, we're also very excited to share our next event on the topic of the economics of buyout on the 5th of December, 2024. So if you're interested, do scan this QR code and sign up. So if you have any questions during today's session later on, simply scan this QR code and it will take you to WOOC Lab. So if you have questions, all you need to do is to just type your questions in and we'll try our best to answer as many as possible later with our speaker as well as moderator. So thank you to all of you who have submitted your questions in advance as well. Right, and without further ado, now it's my privilege to introduce to you the Dean of Nanyang Business School, Professor Jun Yang, for her opening remarks. Professor Jun Yang, please.
A very good evening to everyone, to our distinguished speaker, He Zhiguo, and our moderator, Mr. Ching Wei Hong, and many guests here in the first row, second row, all the rows, our own faculty member, our students, our corporate partners, and all of you for being here tonight. If you're here in person in this room, I hope that you enjoy the music, maybe a little bit loud from time to time. Enjoy the food and enjoy the companies of each other. So if you're online, we have more than 400 people registered online. I like to say good evening. If you're here in Asia, good afternoon. If you're in Europe, and if you're really an early bird in America, good morning. Welcome. So this is the inaugural public lecture of the Dean's Distinguished Speakers Series. And as a business school within a premier technological university, we're trying to connect technology, innovation, and business educations together. And we're trying to facilitate discussions that are going to be insightful, informative for the future development for business as well as society. We're a little bit ambitious for Singapore, Asia, and the world. So that's the main goal. So today's topic is particularly relevant and very timely. So this is the decoupling. For a while, I sent out the email to my friends, to my social connections, as a potential decoupling. And some of my friends warned me it's a decoupling. I said, in the title is called decoupling. I'm putting the potential there. But our speaker is going to discuss more about where we are in terms of the decoupling between the United States and China as of now. So I'm new here. Today is 3 months plus 1 day. I'm new to Singapore. I've spent 25 years on one side of this debate and 25 years on the other side of the debate. So I'm really curious about where we are in terms of the relationship between these two countries, as well as where we are as Singapore, as the leader of the region. To tell us more, we're going to have Professor He Zhiguo. He is the best of economists in his generation, so there's no doubt about that. And he got full professor from University of Chicago from the beginning to the full professor in 7 years, which is very unheard of. He's right now at Stanford University. We are very honored to have him here. His achievement and his expertise are truly unparalleled. And to get our discussions today, we have our moderator, Professor Ching, Professor, you can be, Mr. We have doctor programs here, by the way. Mr. Ching Wei Hong here to be our moderator. Mr. Ching is our Board of Trustee member of NTU, and alongside with Ms. Alice Hong. Alice is also our Board of Trustee member. Both of them are here. Mr. Ching has a long and successful career. I have the concrete number. Should I say that? How long? Okay. A long, successful career in regional finance, wealth management, consumer retail banking, and corporate banking as well. So he was the former deputy president and chief operating officer at OCBC Bank. And Mr. Ching helped build OCBC's consumer banking business throughout Asia. So his deep understanding of fintech is particularly relevant for today's discussion while we're talking about the landscape of US-China financial decoupling, because technology and innovation play critical roles in this discussion. So his strategic insight as well as experience of navigating complex financial systems made him uniquely the moderator for today's event. Without further ado, I think we should all look forward to have an engaging and thoughtful, thought-provoking session today. I understand many questions already come in. There could be more questions. You have the best speaker here, so bring your questions. Mr. Ching, may I now invite you to the stage to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Yang. I'm not sure whether you want me to be a student back here. I'm known to be way too disruptive. Well, thank you everyone for taking time to join us this evening. I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished speaker and guest, Professor He Zhiguo. As the James Irvin Miller Professor of Finance at Stanford University, Professor He is widely regarded as one of the foremost experts in international finance and monetary economics. His work has made significant strides in advancing our understanding of global financial systems, especially in unraveling the complex dynamics between the US and China. Professor He's insight into the evolving financial policies of these two major economies are not invaluable, but essential in today's rapidly shifting landscape. With his extensive research and forward-looking analysis, he brings a unique and authoritative perspective on the critical topic of the US-China financial decoupling. I'm looking forward to the discussion and the opportunity to delve into these insights further. So please welcome me in welcoming Professor He.
What is off? Thanks. Where's the clicker? Great, thanks to everybody for coming to this wonderful evening. My name is He Zhiguo. Right now I'm working at Stanford, but just moved from Chicago. I served there for 16 years, and then just arrived at Stanford. And in some sense that, I went to college in Ching Wei University in '95, where the Chinese financial system at that time almost like none. And then experienced the dramatic growth of all the aspects of China's growth. And then witnessed the honeymoon between US and China, and also how that China from the behind and also catching up, and in a way that actually gets to the worry of some of our U.S. colleagues. And this is the, then we get to the whatever, we're seeing now. And with that almost like 30 years of experience, witnessing and thinking, and also like pondering what's happening, this is get to tonight's talk that I would like to touch on this important issue. Mic does not work. That one's back.
This one too.
Okay. So understand that the everybody who are sitting here have a very, very unique, your own perspectives. And you might not absolutely agree with me on many aspects that I'm going to cover. But what's important is that, we want to know what's happened and what is right now. Maybe I should stand here. No, okay. Okay, so first, let me just walk you through. I'm gonna talk about the three issues, and two big issues. One is this so-called macro decoupling. So these are the macro issues that we typically touch on. So first one is this currency war issue, and I will show you some basic facts so that will shape our discussion. And then one thing that the elephant in the room is that what's happening to Russia. We learn from the experience there. Then the second one is a micro decoupling. So micro decoupling is basically talking about the issue where, investors, as maybe companies that when they thinking about what kind of financial policy that they're taking, they need to get to this part of the facts. All right. So the first one will be the first issue is about the U.S.-China maybe in a currency war. One thing that I wanted to just to remind you, I picked 2001 not only because it's the China gets into WTO, therefore the economic, basically soar, but also this is the year I went to United States. And I still remember that at that time, in order to, of course, you need to get the visa, etc. But more importantly, parents always trying to give some dollar cash to you in case that you need it. Okay. And as always, that we are qualified to get $5,000. When you go to the United States, but often the time the parents will try to give you more. Right. It is, right? And I still vividly remember that I was born from Zhejiang, Shaoxing. At that time, the textile business is already growing. So there's lots of ways to get the black market US dollars. The black market US dollars is 10. Is 10 yuan exchange for $1 USD. The official price at that time is about 9.25. Yeah, sorry, 8.25. So this is the way here, 8.25. Okay, and then the way that I put it down here is a reverse order, which means that going down means the depreciation, just because the exchange rate is always expressed this way. So you can see that here. At that time, it's 8.25, but the black market price is about 10, so which means that the people don't think that RMB is that expensive. But then later on, after almost 6 years, economy is booming and etc. There's some upward appreciation, the pressure when the China depegging its currency from the USD on on July 2005, it's actually, in some sense, people debated on what will happen when it's depegging, and it turned out that the market force pushes it up, and then later on you see that they're getting to like a 6 point something. Then what's interesting that the 08 great financial crisis hits, and at that time that China would like to defend their exchange, the export market a lot. So that time repegging to it was a very, very bold move at that time. And then, you know, things going on. Well, here is the 2015, if you guys still remember, this is a very important policy reform launched by Zhou Xiaochuan. Zhou Xiaochuan and his lieutenant will say that this is an important and a right move. Some of the people might say it's not necessarily, because that clearly triggers very important devaluation, and it's unclear that whether the current top policymakers, how they think about it. From my economist perspective, this is really, really good. And in the sense that even when, this is when I talked to former deputy governor from PBOC that time, I was asking him, you know, what happened around here? What's the pressure you from here? How do you think about that reform that allow the Chinese yuan to depreciate after the negative economic shocks happening? What he told me was of course, that's his side of the story. What he told me that they have a lot of pressure to stop the policy of free exchange over $5,000. At that time, seeing the Chinese yuan go down, many people rushing to the bank branch and try to get $5,000. There was a big pressure from the Beijing saying that we might want to, you know, just ban. People are able to change the dollars to RMB, or RMB to dollars. But they basically said, no, we can't do that. If we do that, then basically people will lose confidence even further, and then things will be much harder to control. So they sustained it, and then, you know, they take on other market forces. This is the one thing that I want to emphasize, is that there are many other market forces to counter market forces, and better use those forces. It's like increasing the, you know, reserve currency, and you know, later on we'll talk about this Hong Kong dollar, Hong Kong Chinese yuan, those issues. Okay, so whatever happened, you see the up and the down. The takeaway from here, what I also showed is a USD to CNY, Euro to CNY. It's just telling you that it seems like, you know, USD and the CNY, more volatile means it's better. Right? More volatile means better, because that means that the USD and the USD are more independent. If you see something like flat like this, that means that it don't have any independence, and this is the where that we are now. And I feel like if you see that, it's actually from the policy perspective, this is a great sign. Okay, so that's the first one. The second slide, I really would like to just bring your attention to something that reflected a little bit of the negative view on the U.S. policy side. Often the time that the U.S. will take the view that often the time they need to do something, but often the time that they also don't know what's the best way to deal with China. So here's quite a funny situation happened right after the trade war launched by the Trump before COVID. So what's funny was the US Treasury Department labeled China as a currency manipulator for the first time since 1994, after PBC allowed RMB to weaken past the psychological important threshold of 7. So around here. Okay, at that time 7 was thinking that once you pass 7, you're gonna fall. Okay, and why is it funny? This was the statement. China has a long history of facilitating an undervalued currency through protracted large-scale intervention in the foreign exchange market. This is said that, look, China, you have been manipulating currency by buying a lot of reserve, spending some reserve to buy USD for a long time. Now, in recent days, China actually become a good boy. China has taken concrete steps to devalue its currency, okay, while maintaining substantial foreign exchange reserves despite the active use of such tools in the past. But basically says that, you were the bad boy, keep playing this way. Now you become a good boy. You don't do this game anymore. Therefore, you actually become even worse. Okay. So the Trump administration was concerned that China might deliberately, of course, that's happening. But the fact that that was a new Ching, if you remember that it was new Ching made that announcement, that will basically draw lots of laughs from economists. And those kind of things are just getting to the situation where it's also that reflected that, I could have put a little bit of silver lining into this statement is that, there's a lot of things that China has its own legitimacy in many policy makings. And often the time it's very hard to figure out who's wrong, who's right. So the third one, it was basically try to tell you that what's happening now. One thing, this is basically coming from the China's annual balance of payments. Remember that if we think about it as currency valuation, the fundamental is super important. And whenever we talk about this currency valuation, the fundamental basically are these are it's what pink, dark pink color. That's the current account surplus. What's important nowadays is it's become unusually large, and I view this as issues. A lot of my colleagues in China thought that this is a great thing just because China keeps exporting. This is fine, which just means that it does not have Okay. And you can see here is the current account surplus. Current account surplus, that's real the core of supporting the currency valuation. Often the time in other countries that whenever they have the currency problem is that it's the fact that they do not have a sustained current account surplus, so that then in the end, the valuation depreciation become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So in that sense that China is doing well. However, then you can see here that around 2015, 2016, there's a big so-called net errors and omissions. Those are the signal of capital flight, and you see something similar around here. What's good is that, at least the 21, 22, 23 is kind of small, but I expect these years, in 2024, I will make prediction in 2024 that maybe the gray part will become bigger just because of the financial decoupling seems to be bigger, and this is my latest slides will tell you. What does this mean? This means just basically that there are many things that think about the custom data on the money flow versus the PBOC data of the money flow, and those things sometimes will not match. Whenever it's not matching, then likely that some of the current the trade are kind of maybe fake. Okay, so there are a lot of study behind it, and this is exactly where you draw some concerns on those issues. Right. The fourth slides, I would like to just telling you it's it's about another leg of these currency valuations. It's on the interest rate differential. Luckily today, we know that the J power actually, cut the 50 basis point. Interestingly, maybe right now the U.S. stock index changed, but yesterday actually doesn't move, so which means a lot of people are already priced in. But whatever it is, it just means that the interest rate, the lower, the worse. Okay, just because on the first order, when you see an interest rate in a modern economy where inflation in a well-functioning economy, when inflation is not a big concern, you see that even in US is only 2%, and China has deflation. Then the interest rate, the first order effect of interest rate is determined by economic growth. Okay, which means that if you see two countries that have differential interest rate, you're going to worry that one country is growing slower than the other. So that's basically is the fundamental that we are facing now, where the US interest rate is way higher than China's interest rate. Okay, that means that China's growth rate is way below the US. Okay. Now you're sort of getting the big picture, from the 30 years now and up until this point. The second big question is about the RMB challenging USD as a reserve currency. From here, you will see that everything is kind of miserable for the CNY. Some of the numbers goes up quite a bit. So here is the share of the global payment system, share of global trade finance system, and the shares in the global foreign excess reserve, and the share in SDR. First of all, let me, if you pay attention to a lot of people put emphasis on SDR, that's a special drawing rights. Okay. China RMB became one of them around 2016. A lot of people labeled it as a big success for the PBOC. However, remember that actually all these three are tightly linked to trade, to the current count, which is physical goods trade. That's almost by definition, right? The only one thing here, the shares in the global foreign exchange reserves, that reflects the non-goods tradable, where the central banks are voluntarily holding assets as a reserve. Okay, so compare these four, you will see that, wow, okay, these three are rising because China's goods produced are still cheap and very good, high quality. So as a result, the exports go up, etc. So this is all driven by trade. But if you think about the financial, motives for hold Chinese yuan as a currency, as a safe asset or reserve asset, we are far, far, far away from that. And it's not changing that much from 2020 to 2024. So do not be misled by these numbers. Those numbers are just by the current, goods trading, not the financial motivations. Okay, so the elephant in the room, I don't need to say it again. I believe that everybody here noticed this thing, and it's also something that clearly that is in the issue, is a capital account liberalization. I do not see it's coming before I pass away, to be honest. I would have put it this way. Just because that, itself, even this question itself worth several generations of research, whether it's a good thing or not a good thing. And given the volatile economic growth, it's very hard. Think about it, the timing is everything, right? So in the midst of a biggest interest rate differential below US and a slowing domestic economy, that's almost impossible in the next several decades. The PBC has been a lonely warrior of reforms. Now has been or had been. I should have put a had been probably. Now the change, the lieutenants or changed, and I basically it's very hard to expect too much of the aggressive reform from the PBC. One thing, good silver lining is that you have to pay attention to this CNH growth. If there's anything that coming from the China reform, in some sense, is super successful and also play a bigger role, is this is something called a CNH. It's very similar to like a euro dollar. If you pay attention, euro dollar is basically the dollars circulated outside of the US. CNH is basically the Chinese yuan circulated outside the mainland. This is offshore CNY. And you can see that recently actually growing more and more. And this is part of the trade, goods trade, but also part of that a lot of people are willing to take these deposits out there and to support all the activities. So that thing is actually a very, very innovative innovation from China. It's underappreciated by the Western media. Final thing is, let me just talk about the cross-border interbank payment system. This was touched on by several questions in the audience. So let me just comment on those things. This is the SIPS participants. Probably you saw these kind of reports saying that, oh, China developed its own payment system in try to replacing SWIFT, right? That probably heard about it. This is basically SIPS. So SIPS participants indeed it goes up. A lot of them are Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, a lot of 26 only, but most of them are in Asia. Basically, that's a payment system where you do trade and then we can settle. That's what's going on. Now, SIPS payment volume is kind of small. So this is a ratio to the total RMB payment system. Look at these numbers, only 1%. Okay, so that's just because the domestic market is really big. This is the one thing that's super important. This is also that the PBOC, cannot sleep during the night if something happened. This is keep PBOC awake. The SIPS is not China's carbon copy of SWIFT. It's a Chinese payment system for cross-border RMB payments and the clearing and the settlement. However, the most important part of the settlement is the messaging part. It's the messaging part where they follow certain protocol and allow two banks just to communicate with each other without any potential, potential entanglement. So in terms of the messaging service, direct participant can use a SWIFT and own messaging, but most of the indirect participant, they have to use it through SWIFT. So what happened right now is that most of the messaging system is still using the SWIFT protocol. And those kind of things, think about it as like a platform where if you use WeChat, then everybody using WeChat, and then they're very hard to move away from that. So that's the SWIFT part that even if that people use SIPs, we are still relying on SWIFT messaging, and this is why that the PBOC or potentially very worried about the Russia issue, okay? Because Russia was basically dropped off from SWIFT. Okay, so let me move on to this third issue, the case of Russia. What happened for the US sanction on Russia? Okay, there's a lot of interesting stories behind it for almost like 2 or 3 years. And let me just highlight several important points so that we get get a sense of what China could do in case that US is sanctioning on China. In February 2022, after that, then the major sanctions were imposed. A key aspect is basically isolating the Russia's financial system from the US dollar economy. And the primary types of is basically one is a banking system, so that you can't
settle your payments, etc. And the central bank is whether central banks are able to defend their own currencies. Okay, so let's just go one by one. What happened in the right after the war was basically immediately U.S. is blocking the 80% of Russia banking sector assets are affected by the sanction. So first one is the full blocking sanctions, which basically means that first of all assets under U.S. jurisdiction were immediately frozen. So that's kind of expected. That's nothing, not that surprising. And here is a U.S. individual entities are prohibited from conducting any service from these targeted companies. And then some large banks were basically sanctioned. The second part is more like, whether you can do business on the financial side. And why, often the time, why doing finance sanctioning? It's just because everything have to go through these intermediary big banks. So very easy to do. That's very easy to do. Think about it, the US now is sanctioning on these chips. That's hard because chips everybody is doing the chips. And if I import something to you, it's very hard to keep track of. But the money is very easy to track. So the swift removal was considered as a very important step and a very, very powerful step. So that's the February 26th, then removed. Later on, when May 31st, 2022, this is the biggest bank. Sberbank is the biggest Russian bank, and this was like, think about it, it's about 3 months that the U.S. feel like they should step up with the strength of the sanctioning. That's why here. There was some interesting cases of exceptions, and it's also interesting to study the exceptions. So one exception, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it has not been removed from that. This exception primarily due to its critical role in facilitating payments for Russian energy exports. So just because that they still need to realize that the energy price was one of the important considerations that they allow for. So from those things, you might, I believe that, in the United States, in the government, a group of very smart guys sifting through all the possible options, and they actually, give different options to the decision maker, and the decision maker basically pick one by one, and at any point of time. Okay. The case 3, issue 3, and then the third one, the case of Russia is on this central bank thing. This one really, really, really scared China's policymaker, also me, in some sense that this is when I was still in Chicago. We were thinking that how can you do that? From an economist's perspective, that's just out off the line. Okay. Off the limit. So they basically froze these the foreign exchange reserves. Remember, this is frozen. Some of the Chinese media was saying that it's a seizure or they take away. That's not true. It's frozen, frozen, which means that it's still yours, but you can't use it. So those are the things that you have the foreign reserve and it's outside. And think about it. This is the nature of the reserve, right? Reserve itself, there was some educational video on some WeChat, which is pretty good actually, much better than me to say it, which basically asks the question, can you take your reserve back? The answer is, as a China, right? China says that, oh, can I take my reserve back? The answer is very, very hard because by definition, these reserves are the assets, right? The assets in today's world, other than, let's say, gold or Bitcoin. This is someone who was asking me that question. But gold or Bitcoin, those are the assets that stand itself. Most of the assets in today's world is other people's liability. US dollar, that piece of paper is US government's liability. So what do you mean by take the reserve back? That just does not matter, right? Think about it. Suppose you take your treasury back. The treasury, there's always a number there. That means that it just recorded as that some US government owes you that money, right? But they could immediately cancel it off if they decided to refute on you. So all these things are just telling you that in today's world, the reserve itself is typically other people owes you, and it's very hard to manage when those things happen. For you, for Russia, that part gets frozen. Some of the China, that's fine. You know, China is a friend. And gold in central bank votes, that's also fine. So that's basically what the Russia that relies on still manages to defend its own currency. Of course, Russia has a lot of oil revenue we will cover later. Okay. The gold part is saying that the U.S. is limited the usability of Russia's central bank's gold by establishing sanctions on foreign persons who can participate and trade with them. This is the SDR, but this SDR is a very small part of it. Gold is the most of the thing that immediately caught, get attention of a PBOC. I didn't have the slides here. I probably should have put it there. Right after that announcement, a PBOC has been steadily increasing the gold reserve for almost consecutive 20 months. Okay, so what's happening to Russia? Russia has a lots of, think about it, 2022, in this case, the current account surplus, which means that Russia is like China is producing a lot of exports to them. And for someone like me, actually, I think this is very bad. What does it mean? This means that you basically export a lot of oil out, but you can't import the necessary goods to you. This is what causes this unusual bad and positive current account surplus. Okay, and you see that the GDP go down like crazy. Okay, and this is 2023 is okay, just because that there's a ways that Russia figured it out how to do, and also China helped. Okay, GDP growth is going up. Okay, so here's the thing: is that so you see all these current account. The current account increases, which means that they are making money. But where does this money go? It has to be somewhere. So there's some central bank of Russia. Actually, they reported these things. So you can see there's a portfolio equity, portfolio debt. Those things go down. Other investment goes up like a crazy assets. So when you make money, right, you have assets, right? Because you're making money, you have money. Money has to sit somewhere. That's called assets. But where are they? Didn't say anything, but there are a lot of guesses. There's a lot of digging up the data, etc. Although there's no official number, seems like a lot of the bank deposits, loans, traded credits is in the Chinese banks. This is also that supported by later where the President Biden, so it's like December 22, this last year, issued an executive order that is stepping up the sanction, which is never happened before. Something called secondary sanctions. So what does it mean? Well, primary sanctions basically saying that I'm gonna penalize the U.S. citizens doing business with Russia, right? Because I'm enemy of Russia, and my country's people cannot deal with Russia. That's totally fine. The secondary sanctions is basically saying that whoever doing business with Russia, even if it's not my people, are gonna sanction you. That's the secondary sanction. So this particular executive order pretty much at that time was, even though they didn't point fingers to any person, but it's a very clear is a China at that time. So granting new authority to impose sanctions of foreign financial institutions that facilitate significant transactions involving Russia's military industrial base, even where there's no U.S. nexus to the transaction. Okay. So that's the secondary sanctions where they, it's interesting that they step up this way. And this is basically the same. All right. So if you ask one more question, which is that, okay, now, so far it's about Russia. And then let's think about, if there's some events happen so that, US might think about remove Chinese banks out of SWIFT. I still feel it's extremely unlikely just because the economic tie is too big. Removing from the SWIFT is very, I wouldn't say as a bomb, as a nuclear bomb, but it is already big TNT terms. Chinese banks are much bigger and more important. The big five are the list of global systematically important banks, G-SIBs, and none of the Russia banks over there. And there was some incidents, very interesting incidents, and I don't know how much people know that, is that in November 9th, a ransomware attack on ICBC. ICBC is an industrial commercial bank of China, 工商银行, disrupted the US Treasury trades. US Treasury trades are super deep markets. Typically, you put in $1 billion, didn't give a damn. Okay. Yields on Treasury bonds rose sharply on November 9 after particularly poor auction on 30-year bonds, and the 30-year bond rose by 12 basis points. Why is the case? Just because ICBC, just because it's a network of the customers, so a lot of trades actually go through the ICBC. And then PPC and SWIFT also kind of collaborate. And if you really pushing further, saying who owns the SWIFT, actually, ownership-wise, it's not a US. It's some European Belgian company. However, the board, most of them are US people. So this is a little bit of a complication. Who control that? So this is the thing that I just feel. This is like when the US would think about the SWIFT, removing the China from the SWIFT. That's a much bigger cost. Okay. All right. So let me just. I think what's the time now? It's 17. Okay. So I will spend probably 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, 15 minutes to the. For the micro side. Micro side, there's some of the incidents I feel it's more interesting because maybe that some of the things that you experienced. So key facts of the U.S.-China financial integration was basically that still there were this is the Chinese companies listed there. This is the China hold U.S. Treasury securities. This number was significantly lower. If usually you quoted the numbers like 1 trillion, now it's only 0.77. Lots of them being replaced by gold, as I said. And this is the Chinese holdings of US corporate bonds and all these things. Basically that when you're summing over, while it is still ranks among trillion-dollar businesses that it cannot be ignored, it's about a trillion. But a dramatic decrease from 5 trillion to 2021, which is already after the trade war, right? At that time, already after the trade war, to about 2.7. So it's about a half of the holding of each other. All right. So this is another thing that people thought that this is very important. Right? That this is not. This was a very, very got all the attention about this issue of that China VIE structure were listed in US, and then US regulators basically warns that, we cannot do the auditing on their books, therefore be careful, that incidents, okay? What's funny, and first, most important takeaway is that it has been resolved, but something that during this whole process was interesting. So the PCLB signed a statement of a protocol agreement with the CSRC, that's our Zhengjianhui. This is the SEC version of China. And MOF is a Ministry of Finance, so it's basically Treasury, regarding cooperation in the public accounting firms. So the US version, it's often the case that both sides have a different way of translating it. So the US version of the announcement was that the PCAOB is the US part of the government agency, has sole discretion to select the firms, audit the engagement, blah, 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 blah. Procedures are in place for PCAOB, investor and investor to view complete audit work papers with all these things. While here, Chinese version emphasizing like the two sides will communicate and coordinate in advance to plan for all these things. Right? This is the usual thing of that. However, that since September 2022, they already did all these auditing, including the DD, etc. And so far, everything is smooth. And so far, there's already several companies that actually goes to the NASDAQ and gets listed. So that itself is cleared up. But that's left some scar there. But I won't say this is a bigger block for the U.S.-China issue. So this is about the VIE structure. So I believe that everybody sort of understand it. This is basically saying that some of the companies were not according to Chinese law. Think about a SINA. SINA, if you're a content provider, then officially speaking, you can't be controlled or have shares by the foreigners because it's a content provider. As a result, that you can't get it listed, but you could do the following, which is that the Chinese company, that's OPCO. OPCO basically signed an agreement with a WUFI, that's a wholly foreign-owned enterprise, a WUFI, and these WUFI are basically owned by some publicly listed company of Cayman Island, and those guys gets listed. And the concern was that this kind of agreement, this kind of the contract is just a business contract. It's not an ownership contract. That was this VIE structure issue. All right. So all the things you can see that that's the outcome where as of January 8th, 2024, it's basically market cap is going down. Very disappointing to hear now. During the time, we know this NVIDIA, etc. Look at it. These CSI 300 is this is in China. It's not great, but it's still better than the golden. Those companies that are listed outside of China. S&P 500, we know that it's really performing extremely well. All right. And partly it's just about because delisting concerns really hurts the economy. And also that you think about it right now is about only 0.85 trillion market cap. So that's only look at the listed stock market. Several years ago, 4 years ago, it's a 2.1. So it's more than half. It's more than half. And one thing that there was, this is a more like the VIE structure where the companies are kind of like not state-owned. Okay, think about a SINA, think about a DD, that kind of company. There were these companies that initially basically was a triumph. When I was a student, several of my classmates helped these deals. You must remember these deals, China Mobile, China Unicom, these state-owned companies basically was voluntarily delisted, not being forced to delisted, voluntarily delisted from the Chinese from the NASDAQ. Okay, so all right, this is my second last slides. This is a very interesting incident, which also changed my own perspective slightly. So I wanted to explain to you that the resentment from the U.S. side, it's not just the policymakers, but also I would say, mass media. It's not mass media, but the mass people, where their views actually gets voiced out. So let's just go through these issues. So CFIUS, you must know CFIUS. CFIUS is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. That serves the president in overseeing the national security risk of a certain FDI in the U.S. economy. So whenever you had, I know that Alex is investing in companies there. If you invest in company there, CFIUS will have some say on your action. Okay. When the CFIUS does not have the authority to block a transaction, local governments start to fill in the gaps. That was new to me. So here's one situation, one incident that was reported in many news media. Fufeng is a Chinese food manufacturer. Fufeng USA is a US subsidiary of Chinese food manufacturer Fufeng. At that time, Fufeng USA in 2022, they bought 300 acres in North Dakota. They was planning a corn mill 12 miles away from the Grand Forks Air Force Base. Right? That's Air Force Base. I don't know what, something important seems. So sparkling the national security concern. Now, Fufeng USA announced that CFIUS lacked the jurisdiction over their land acquisition. Okay, why this is the case? Because there's some rules of these CFIUS abilities. So CFIUS typically reviews deals within 1 mile of a sensitive basis and 99 miles of a highly sensitive ones. That was the rule there. Okay, so if you are buying something that are within 1 mile of a sensitive base, then the CFIUS can block it. If you are 99 miles away of highly sensitive ones, then your CFIUS are able to block it as well. But at that time, Grand Forks Air Force Base is classified as a sensitive, so the land for outside of the jurisdiction. Okay. Then Fufeng thought it was okay. However, that since CFIUS could not act, local communities, they don't like it. Local communities, they don't like it. They took matters into their own hands. Then the Grand Forks City Council, so that's like, think about I was in Palo Alto. Basically, in Palo Alto, if you wanted to build more houses, there's a committee to decide whether you are able to build the houses. Well, so they voted to block these projects. While unable to force land sale because this is privately owned, all these land are privately owned, you can sell on the purchase. But the council can deny building permits and the infrastructure of access is effectively halting the project. That reminds me a lot of China's local government tactics in the past. In some senses, it's a tit-for-tat issues. Okay. So this is really my last slide. I hope that I've given you a bunch of facts to give you some thoughts on that. Huge interest at stake. I don't need to say anything. From my own perspective, I'm watching it. It's not like I'm really excited to watch it, to be honest. It's deteriorating, I could say, from here. This is to my surprise, because a lot of times we think that this is always policymakers try to get the election won, all these things. But this is just reflected that there's something deep issue about the attitudes of both sides. So this is the coming from the Blinken. This is Xiaoyuan Gaoqiang. This is small yard, high fence. I have a lot of people probably heard about that. Those are I feel this is the narratives that are probably they have extremely flexibility, whatever they want to say. Let's go back to today's topic, which is the financial decoupling. And the financial decoupling, I was explaining to Dean Yang. Financial decoupling actually often the time is quicker than economic decoupling. So therefore, I picked the easier thing to talk about, which is financial decoupling. Now, obviously, the Fed will likely from hiking at the end, it actually goes down. Beijing is always, it's not always start to, or they realize that they need to find some new words called patient capital, 耐性资本. And I don't think those things works. At the end of the day, market forces speak for themselves. And I wanted to just end my talk with this sentence, and I was carefully thinking through all these things. The recent and the severely lagged. If someone like Alex has a foresight, they think that, that should have happened a long time ago. But why people wait, right? Think about it as like a long protracted process. It's because that, people's updating their fleet, right? And when they start to think that, okay, fine, maybe this is the right time to make some quick decision. We are starting to seeing we're basically at the middle of that process. And I would say that maybe, next 1 year, you will see even more that kind of a retreat. And fundamentally, that the capital follow the opportunity. So it's about increasingly pessimism on China's economy. Now, myself, if you want to ask me about China's economy, actually, I am not that pessimistic about that. Later on, we can discuss about those issues. It's just that it's not very easy for the foreign capitals to capitalize these gains. So that's the fundamental shift from the Beijing's perspective, and that's just reflected the issue that are now that are almost it's extremely challenging to face. And unfortunately, Dean Yang was asking me to put some silver lining on that. It is hard, and if there's any silver lining, when I arrived at Singapore during night, I see lively places, and even got to the NTU 2019. Everybody tell me that the NTU is at the place where a little bit west, right? Now, when I move out, or when I walk out, wow, this is another Shanghai. That probably will be a lot of winners, including Singapore, and that I will end my talk here.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Zhiguo, for a very insightful lecture. So maybe get you to sit here. Okay, so now we will move on to the discussion and Q&A segment moderated by Mr. Ching, who is also sitting here on stage with Professor Zhiguo. So for our audience members, both here in person as well as online, please feel free to submit your questions via the QR code. So we'll do our best to address as many questions as possible. So there'll be a lot of it coming in, and then we'll just try our best to address as much as possible. All right, Mr. Ching, over to you.
Thank you, Professor, for the very enlightening presentation. Yeah. Thank you, Professor He, for that very enlightening presentation. Just like to check with the audience here in terms of people with skin in the game. I'd like to know how many people here holds Chinese equities? Wow. All right. That's a
Very
good
good,
reflection.
very
That's a
good.
pretty good sizable audience that's holding Chinese equities. How many is holding, because the last few years in Singapore, we've also been pitching CNH deposits in Hong Kong and in Singapore. How many is holding CNH deposits? Less. More speculators. So, Professor, I had an opportunity to talk to Professor He earlier, and I asked him about whether he's got any OB markers and no-go zones, and he promptly, quickly responded, no, none at all. Ask me anything you want. So I think we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation ahead. As a moderator, I guess I get first shot at this, right? So Professor He, with the coming US elections, how do you see this decoupling happen and evolve between a Trump administration versus a Harris administration? Because it's interesting when we saw what Trump did in his administration, and when we went into Biden, it didn't actually get better, it got worse. So how do we see this pan out with the elections coming up?
Yeah, so first of all, my current feeling is that Trump, the chance of a Trump gets elected is lower than Cameron. Of course, do not take my words to bet. No, I'm not a betting guy, but this is my perception. And obviously that there was one thing we learned in the past several years is that Trump is the one that just basically put some topic, like it's like a third rail issues that are put on the front, and then he basically without any just talk about it, and then people start talk about it, and then people feel like this is something that we have that become the fact. Okay, so that's his strategy, and what I wanted to say is that I would imagine that obviously that if Trump gets elected, that things will be way worse. I believe he will do 100% tariff. In his mind, so what? It's, we're gonna do it, and a lot of times that the fact that if he gets elected, immediately tells you that there are a lot of the Fufeng, Grand City, whatever, those voters are behind it. So in some sense, he understands that if he wins, that means that those people support are very strong. So he would like to fulfill these promises, and he's never shy on doing that kind of things. So in some sense, I was always thinking, oh, that could be really bad. But I also realized that I think Camera has a way bigger winning odds. So it's a hedging.
So Trump will be worse than
way worse.
Way worse than
Way
Harris.
Worse. Way worse. And I'm not saying the camera is good, okay?
Okay, moving on. I've got a question from Mr. Wang Lu. So he's referring to, again, for the industrial sectors or renewable energy, EVs, semiconductors, batteries. How do you see the respective industries in the US China pan out and evolve with the ongoing US Sino tension?
Yeah, so I went back to China this June. Great positive surprise coming from China on these EV cars. I can tell you one, you should not be surprised that if you walking in Shenzhen and all the taxis are basically BYD, that's kind of probably you expected. What's surprising to me is that when I was in Beijing, I basically using Didi, right? Then get a taxi, I get on and I see extremely nice screen, right? Those EV cars always have this big screen. And interestingly, I didn't recognize the logo, and beautiful logo. Then I was asking, I asked him, what is this? He was saying this is the Jihu. This is the AFOX. It's built by Beijing, like Ichi, which is a state-owned car manufacturer in Beijing. That basically, reflected the fact that at this point is that the EV car competition is not just several of the well-known. We know that BYD is the common names, but also that the state-owned players also get on. And then we had some interesting conversation with kind of quasi policymakers, and they were telling us that at this point that every new car gets on the market, half of them, 50% of the new car is an electronic vehicle. It's a full electronic vehicle. And Beijing does have the ambition is that in the 5 years, basically wanted to replace everything. Okay, so in some sense that the tension, why I wanted to say these, the biggest tension obviously is that the Trump will say, let's just put the tariff of 100%. There was several economists did some calculation. 1% is not enough. It's not. 100% is not enough. He was proposing 100%, which basically is whatever the price times the two. It's not enough just because of the cost and etc. that you would think about. So, and even if the Trump were thinking about 150 or 200%, Beijing has the ambition to basically only relying on the domestic market. And that part of the ambition was pretty much clear when I talked to the top policymakers, etc. Obviously, they would love to kind of like export this technology to the Europe. That's already happening. So there's a leading Europe group. I don't know how to pronounce it. Started with S, Stanford, maybe. That was basically owning all these important brand names. They already signed a deal with the deep one leading EV cars. Basically, the signed deal is on exchanging the technology. So those issues is that give extremely positive excitement for the whoever I talked to when I was in Beijing. And in some sense that I was a bit sad about it actually. Why? Because that I really worried that our policymakers only looking at these silver-lined aspects, and therefore that have a wrong impression of the entire economy where it's going. So all the things that the policymakers need to have a extremely clear minds on seeing all these data coming out. And kind of doubt that whether this is still a very, very transparent process going on for the policymakers to get the right statistics.
Okay, but that again, what I'm hearing from you is that that's still catering predominantly into the Chinese market. That's the first priority.
Yes.
But
they're
in the
prepared to do that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
They're definitely prepared to do that. And that's, in some sense, it is in response to the hostility from the external markets. They were encouraging a lot of EV cars to go out, but you know, it's really not in their control. And the more, like, as always, Beijing is always have two sides of people were try to influencing the policymakers. And often the time that the more the strong opposition from the external world, then one side of the advocates for Beijing saying, you know, Beijing, Beijing, we need to be strong as well. We need to fight back. That part gets stronger and stronger. And that basically is positively self-reinforcing with the other side of the hawkish side. And then this is what's happening from my experience in the past almost 10 years. That each side just step up, and to the point where we kind of like lost track of why we are fighting for.
Thank you. Coming back into the region here, I have a question from Mr. Singodevan Vasudevan, and he's asking, what are the opportunities and threats to Singapore businesses with the US-China decoupling? And I think I'll also pose it with another question, is stating what countries in Asia stand to benefit the most from this China-US trade decoupling?
I you know, this is the Singapore, so I you know, many of my friends were, you know, I think probably 70% of my rich friends are coming to the United States. The other 30%, you know, their first choice is Singapore. So, you know, I don't.
This question is coming from people who bought Chinese shares.
I also have Chinese shares, quite a bit. Stocks? Stock. Yes, you can sell. So back to the, you know, Singapore is such a, you know, interesting country that are worthy of studying, and many different policies, etc. It's in some sense just too small to take this big advantage. So why I'm saying that is just because, you know, you can look around that I think India should be the one to look at it. I was, you know, impressed by the number of highly educated engineers, right? So in my view is that these like engineers who are willing to really doing codes. There's two countries doing coding works, okay? Two countries, one is China, the other is India, not others. Like those massive amount of engineers who are willing to doing code and happy with it. I don't see it in the United States. So that's the part. The other thing, you know, people talk about VNA. That actually, I have a different views on that. So there was an interesting meeting we held. We invited a bunch of Vietnamese economists, experts, to come into Ching Wei University to have a discussion. And interestingly, which, you know, I didn't know, was that in Vietnam, even though it's also a communist party country, the land are privately owned. which is great, you might say, but it's just so bad to develop infrastructure. Over the past 20 years, the investment as a part of GDP to infrastructure is only 5 to 10% every single year, which means that it's almost impossible to really take over whatever China's manufacturing part. This is the why that often the time you see a lot of data is basically China manufactured all these things and then transported to the Vietnam and put the label and then move to then just the ship to the United States. So this is a part that I feel like Vietnam somehow that I don't know what they're gonna do, but those are the issues that is just China is the opposite, right? China basically at that time, take advantage of this thing, build all this infrastructure. India needs to do a lot of infrastructure as well, but they seem to have the right attitude, also right system to catch it up.
Right. I know we're running out of time, but there's a whole long list of questions that they're still coming in. But that answers Ms. Sherpa Burana's question of where India is placed in it. I think Professor has addressed it. And then maybe I'll just put one more question from Mr. Hu Hong, who's asked, what is the possible worst case scenario for this decoupling?
I thought it's, I already a little bit, I always kind of like, not the most pessimistic one, but I would say that every, in the past 5 years, I updated my belief downward. So the worst case scenario, a lot of people say war, which to be honest, I don't know what will happen. And the first thing that myself must be the one that are getting hurt the most. Right? It's I still hold the Chinese passport, so what I do. But from my own perspective, is that almost impossible. There are I don't want it to make. There are reasons that I feel like I'm right. That just because that there's too much of a risk for the current leader to wage into the war. Okay.
I think we will probably open up to one question from the floor before we wrap up. Is there anybody out here that's got one last pressing question to pose to Professor He? Anyone up there? Yes. Okay.
Hi, Professor. Tommy from OCBC. So, right now, I think in basically in Asia, right, we don't want to choose the side between US and China. But have you heard anything in the US? Eventually, the US will force countries in Asia to pick a side between China and the US. Have you heard about that? If they are going to do that, what kind of mechanism they can impose on the Asian countries to choose the side between the US and China? Thank you.
Great question. And also that I actually had a positive spin on this issue. There's a lot of countries are playing with it. And they gain quite a bit out of this. So there's no way that in the current world that the US can force you. Immediately when they get to the bargaining table, they realize that they need to bribe you. Okay, so there's a teeny difference or very subtle difference between force you versus that, I would have liked you to do that. And if you do that, and not gonna win, I will do something else. And I think, in some sense, that this is a good thing about what's the current world. When I was going to the US, I feel like it just basically, there's one polar, right? It's just the US. In 2001, it's pretty much after the Cold War, US is the only one big superpower country. Slowly, you get to the two, and sometimes Russia plays that role, but then now clearly Russia is not, and China is there. the good thing about it, so as let's say I put aside my nationality, put aside where I was, in a world where this balanced power is always good. Balanced power is always good, so that every single country, let's say Singapore, including Singapore, also let's say Korea, etc. They always have a complicated historical things that we have a conflict of things, and as a result, that because of balance of power, then every single country actually get to their power to say something. This is something that I think that at least that in the current situation in the political system or geopolitical scenario there, it's a pretty positive side of what I see. And I haven't seen anywhere saying that, oh, US forcing some country to do anything yet. You know, later on when the war occurs, probably what I've expressed about the positive side disappear. But because that I don't think there's a war, because that I think that the balance of power is basically a economic outcome where people just bargain, getting the interest of each other, that's a shining side of the world that we are living, and I feel like this is a much better world than in 2001, where everyone was basically kissing ass of the United States.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess I will, for all of us, I'll hold on to my Great Multi shares. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much to offer everyone here for your thoughtful questions, and special thank you to Mr. Ching as well as Professor Zhiguo for the engaging discussion. I'm sure a lot of you were very engaged, and maybe if you guys also have a lot of questions, we're really sorry we couldn't have the time to address all of them. So now we'd like to take the time to express our appreciation to both our speaker as well as our moderator. So may I invite Dean Yang back onto the stage to present these tokens of appreciation. So Dean Yang will now first present the memento to Professor Zhiguo. And now the memento to Mr. Ching. So may I now kindly request Professor Zhiguo, Mr. Ching, as well as Dean Yang to stay on stage for a group photo. Thank you so much. You may now return to your seats.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming here and spending the whole evening with us. This is the first of a whole series of public lectures. I hope you like it. Hope you see some facts. Singapore is unique in many different aspects. For example, the vision of our founding father put Singapore in a really good spot, right? So this is a country with good law, legal system, the country with good policies, good taxes, good government, and good safety. And Singaporeans speak both Chinese and English, and plus several other languages, right? So that's why a lot of the demand, a lot of the talent, and a lot of money are coming this way. So when we face the big challenges of the world at the same time in this region, I hope Singapore can play a bigger role in terms of the impact in this country, in this region, and beyond. So we do play some pretty subtle roles here. For example, if I launch one Chinese program, I will launch one English program. So we are still going to be in the middle between two countries. but that's where we are. Take this opportunity. For example, if you're online, I know there are a few hundred online. We are recruiting actively, right? If you're in the US, you're in Europe, you're in Australia, we have the resources. We welcome you to join NBS as a professor and as a practice professor or a teaching faculty. Our doors are open to you. Please, thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.
Right, so before we end, may I just bring your attention once again to the 5th of December event that will be happening this year later on. So if you're interested, you can just scan the QR code. And with that, I'd like to conclude tonight's event, and we'd like to express our heartfelt thanks to Professor He Zhiguo, Mr. Ching, and as well as Dean Yang, and all of those who have made this event possible. To all our attendees, both in person as well as online, we sincerely hope you found tonight's discussion both valuable as well as thought-provoking. We look forward to seeing you at future events, such as the one that's upcoming on 5th December, and here's wishing you a pleasant evening as well as safe travel. Thank you very much.